welcome back. I'm Mike Quincy.
I'm Ryan Pizlakowski.
I'm Alex Nizick.
So today on this awesome podcast, we are going to be talking about the 2024 Subaru Crosstrek. It has a number of updates and new stuff going on. It's got an improved chassis, a redesigned interior, an updated exterior, which I have some opinions on. The engine and transmission also got some refinements. It has a 152 horsepower, 2-liter 4-cylinder hooked up to a continuously variable transmission, or as like we say in the biz, a CVT. 29 miles per gallon overall from our last tested Crosstrek, so that was pretty good. So we're going to have to wait and see how the new one fares. No more manual transmission.
Womp womp. Boo.
Which isn't a huge, I mean, I don't think many people bought them, but anyway, that it's gone. Like many cars these days. There's going to be supposedly a plug-in hybrid option for 2024. And to put our Consumer Reports hat on for just a second, standard EyeSight driver assistance system now includes automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection. And that's the good news. But the bad news is there's no standard blind spot warning. Mm-hmm. We don't think that drivers have to pay so much to get it. And again, we'll get into that in a second. This is a very popular segment. It competes with the Mazda CX-30, the Kia Niro hybrid. And we rented mid-level 2024 premium model from Subaru for a few weeks. And the premium sits just above the base in the lineup and below the limited sport and the wilderness. It starts at $24,995 and goes up to $30,895. And we drove it on the highway, took it on trips, even did a little dirt driving. And Alex, let's start with you. Sure. And what did you think of the new Crosstrek?
Yeah, so basically it's a bunch of tweaks, right? It's not really, I mean, they're calling it a full redesign, and it is, because I think all of these tweaks together make it kind of a full redesign. If it was just a couple of these things, maybe in isolation, it would have maybe been a refresh, right?
You can say it looks exactly the same.
It looks like exactly the same, and it hasn't changed its mission,
but not a full chassis up. I mean, it says an improved chassis, but not a new chassis.
Yeah, totally, it's the same Subaru global platform, right? And they've just made some tweaks. So like they've added more structural adhesive, for example, and some other high strength steel for crash protection and things like that. But yeah, it's essentially the same platform. So they've just kind of gone through the whole car and kind of massaged all these things. I mean, a lot of like really detailed work if you kind of look at their press materials and all these things to just kind of refine the experience. And I think even though it hasn't fundamentally changed, it's slightly more comfortable, quieter, a little bit more refined, but still does what a Crosstrek does best, is rugged. It's inexpensive, which I think that goes a long way these days, is that, as all these EVs are coming and everything is hyper expensive.
60, 70, 80,000 and above.
Right. It's the fact that you can get something pretty capable like this and livable for $25,000.
It's a lot of car for that kind of money.
Yeah, I think so.
Definitely. And they did. That was a good word you used. They massaged it. They did make some little tweaks, and it's noticeable. But as I was joking earlier, I mean, it doesn't look any different. But that's maybe a good thing, because the Crosstrek has that kind of off-roady look for people that are, Subaru fans, and the Foresters maybe not their cup of tea. This is a little bit maybe less practical, but it's a little more rugged looking, right? So it might attract a younger audience, I think.
Right.
And I think it has in the past, but it's been, I think it was pleasant to drive. I don't know what you guys thought, but I thought the first thing that hit me was the ride was really good.
Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so good in the past. It was a bit rough, I thought. But other than that, I'm kind of impressed with it. Really.
I mean, not Jeep Wrangler rough.
No, but it was. This thing's compliant. Like it's so. I drove down the dirt road and it just soaks everything up in its way. Even a couple of the good potholes, and it's like I was shocked. I guess it was remarkably comfortable.
Yeah. I'm kind of a sucker for a good ride, I guess, and a lot of cars these days don't, because they're all trying to be sporty, right? This thing's definitely not. It's not really what you're getting into if you buy one of these, but that's kind of how the old one was. I mean, it was a little rougher, so they refined the ride a little bit, but it just like soaks up all the bumps really nicely. It has some body roll and things like that, but it kind of, fits the bill of what it's trying to do, and it remains comfortable, especially for how small it is. Yeah. And I think that's one thing about them not really changing the way it looks, is that they didn't change any of the dimensions really. Right. It's kind of the same size, and I think that's a good thing, because it's pretty compact. good in cities, even though it's kind of this lifted little hatchback thing. Yeah, so I'm glad it didn't grow, right? I mean, you see the Civic is now the size of an Accord was like yesterday.
Literally.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about the styling on my drive-in today, and how Subaru, it seems, is getting a little obsessed with these, black little fender flare wheel arch things that they put on the WRX and the Outback, and now in this redesigned Crosstrek. And I mean, it's not like the WRX was always a styling exercise. It was always kind of purposeful. You knew exactly what it was, and so it wasn't some slick like super look to it. So they put the black cladding around the wheel wells on the WRX, and completely turned me off.
Yeah.
And then so when I saw it on the Crosstrek, I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't understand. Does Subaru have a styling department, and why do they keep doing this?
Yeah, I agree. It kind of reminds me of the Outbacks when they kind of
Right.
earlier Outbacks had that, and it's like great car, but just kind of made the car look frumpy, I thought.
Well, and if you think, the fender flares to make it look like
Yeah.
you're off-roading,
Yeah.
why are they on the WRX?
You know what worries me about those though is over time what happens is because plastic fades, and you get that
Totally.
sort of
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
chalky
yeah.
looking and it's like I don't know if that was we'll see.
And
I guess
they're not even like round,
Right.
They're like squared off.
triangle
They're
shape of
they're
the-
awkward.
They're kind of awkward. They like cut in at the bottom and stuff.
They're making a wheel well look, squared off, which of course, as you know, being in the tire business, they're not exactly square now, are they?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully not. No.
Well, one reason anyway, I suspect, is it's essentially a lifted Impreza, right? So it's got to look different than the Impreza. So if you just lifted it and did nothing else, the Impreza doesn't have those wheel arches, right? Or those fender flares. So
Not yet.
They got it. Not yet.
The day's not over.
Good point. So I think that is one way they can make it look a little different, for better or worse.
And as you guys know, there are some people on our staff that really love lumbar support and seats.
I don't know who you're talking about.
And this one has the power front driver's seat with adjustable lumbar.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of the seats?
It fit me quite well. It's the power makes it, you get those infinite kind of adjustments where you don't with the manual seat. But the seat itself I thought was comfortable. This car is easy to get in and out of. It's a little bit higher. Should be easy to get in and out of that type of a car.
Yeah.
A little higher. So it's just easy to jump in and out of and drive. It's nowadays I've said this a few times on the podcast. Every now and again we get a car that's just easy to drive. You just get in and go, and it's like a breath of fresh air. And this car is like that. And the seat just adds to that.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty nice. I mean, I didn't necessarily drive it yet for hours on end, which hopefully we'll do when we get our own. But initial impression is that it's nicer than the old one, first of all. But yeah, it kind of fits me well. And yeah, the fact that it's power even on this lower trim level, not the lowest, but one up, right, is definitely nice to have. So yeah, it was comfortable.
And as you sit in the driver's seat and you get the car started and you start driving, your hands are resting on a plastic steering wheel. And Alex, you and I have talked about this with other cars in the past, and it's so I find it like depressing.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why, right? It's cheaper. This is a it's a more inexpensive car, right? It's not crazy expensive. But yeah, it's a pet peeve because it's the thing you hold on to
The most.
Right.
single time.
Every time you're driving.
This car does not have hands-free.
No hands-free. Yeah.
Self-driving capability, right? So you're
No, keep
using
your hands
the
on
wheel.
the wheel, please.
Please do that. So just, I mean, practically speaking, it's more slippery than having generally than a leather-covered or fake leather-covered wheel, and it just doesn't feel as great. So yeah, I don't know. We get a couple cars that come through. I know one of our Accords that we just got, Honda Accord, has that. I would try, I know this, not everybody necessarily can, but I would try to get up to the whatever trim level it takes to get a covered wheel, just for that nicer feel.
Yeah, but I mean, it's. I don't buy the excuse. It's sort of inexpensive, so it doesn't, because we've had some Hyundais that cost about the same as a Crosstrek or less.
Yeah.
That have some kind of wrap on the wheel.
Yeah,
I know this kind of seems like a minor detail.
Yeah.
But
It's a thing you live with every single day.
Like you said, you literally hold it the most, and I don't know. It can't be that much more expensive to put even a fake leather wrap on the wheel.
Yeah.
Let's be real, right?
Right.
But,
And to drive it means you got to adjust it. You got to work with the controls. And we had a few issues with these controls, didn't we?
But yeah, the whole screen in the car. I mean, it's what you're seeing. We first saw it in the WRX when we tested that last year. Outback has it now. Other vehicles from Subaru, and they got rid of all of the climate knobs and the buttons and all these things, and it's just one giant portrait style screen in the car. I think the base model, they haven't really showed us pictures of that yet. I think that gets their kind of lower tier system
Split,
where it's the two screens split on top of each other. I don't know if that's any better, but that's what it is. Yeah, so just by putting everything into the screen, and they did fix the climate menus a little bit from when we tested the WRX. The WRX had like, if you had passenger in the car or driver, all the climate stuff was in two separate menus, and you couldn't do things at the same time. So like, let's say you get into the car with somebody and you both want to turn on the heated seats. You basically had to wait your turn, right? Or whoever got to it first. So they've consolidated things. It's all under one menu. But yeah, it's still extra steps to open that up and do the whole thing. And it's just not the most responsive system out there. Is it a deal breaker? A deal breaker? Probably not. I did notice still like some climate buttons on the side. But
yeah, I did notice a delay on the screen. It wasn't the most responsive.
No, definitely not.
By today's world, is those should be pretty quick. I mean, I think.
Right.
When it just takes from the driving, because you click something and then you don't know if you clicked it, or if it's delayed, you're like, it's distracting.
Right. Well, that was I was going to say, it's a subtle reminder. We're doing a lot of the stuff while we're driving, which is common. And so to make any control, even listen, compared to Lucid or Tesla or anything, this screen is pretty easy. But it's still, we can't cut them any slack because it should be easier.
Yeah, it just there's really no benefit. I mean, all they really did was remove the climate stuff and put it in the screen, right? And yeah, I just don't see the point, because surrounding it is a traditional lever shifter, and you have traditional analog gauges, and like, I just don't. There's no need for it. The car is kind of straight to the point, functional, and then you go and you do this, and I just don't.
It hinders a little
not better for it.
It's Subaru's attempt to like dazzle a younger audience, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not like the system does anything all that crazy, right? It's not like a Tesla where you have all this functionality and features, galore in there. It's still pretty basic. So there's it's not really utilized in a way that makes sense to me.
Well, listen, the Crosstrek debuted in 2012. So Subaru is obviously sticking with this platform, sticking with this idea. They don't want to change it too much, like you mentioned. Odds are probably decent reliability. Subaru has a pretty good history as a company for producing reliable cars. Something, real Subaru hallmark. Standard all-wheel drive. Probably you don't even have to say that, but it's true. Right. But speaking of all-wheel drive, it does have a little bit of off-road chops, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just a lifted Impreza, right? It's a couple inches, actually.
Yeah, so it's just respectable. Yeah.
Yeah, for the class, this compact crossover class, I think it's got the most ground clearance out of any of them. Comparable maybe to like the Bronco Sport that came out if you get certain trims of that vehicle. But yeah, so that helps. It's got pretty decent like approach and departure angles on the bumpers, front and rear. We took it not on our full scale rock hill with the boulders and everything, but we kind of have this descent to it where it's also rocky and kind of off-roady, and it was able to go down and up that no problem. Tons of ground clearance. The all-wheel drive system worked really well to just kind of limit slip and things like that. And that's without putting it in any crazy off-road modes or anything like that. You just kind of go, right? Which is nice. You don't have to mess with anything.
Yeah, don't expect to do any wild off-roading, but you got a little dirt path to get to the campsite or something, and this thing is
perfect for that.
More than capable.
I mean, another kind of Subaru trademark. They kind of light off-roading, but still the purposeful idea of wilderness and outdoor adventures are still ringing true with this Subaru, like almost every other one. And we're going to be buying our own test model soon, so we could just tell our Talking Cars audience to check out the first drive on consumerreports.org and see what we said about it, and we'll have more on this vehicle when we get our own, put some miles on it, and put it through our testing. And this is where we'll get into the audience question segment of the podcast. We love the questions. Keep them coming. Text 30-second videos. Send them all to talkingcars@icloud.com. It's talkingcars@icloud.com. This week, we have a special treat. A video question comes from Luke in Colorado.
Hey, Talking Cars. This is Luke in Colorado. My family have been fans and subscribers since before I was born, 16 years ago. And speaking of being 16, I'm in search of my first car, and I'd love your help. What would you recommend for a new teen driver who also wants a touch of fun in the driving experience? Not talking true sports cars, but a manual transmission would be great. What are some manual cars that also come with AEB and other important safety features? Do you have any other advice for me? Thanks, and keep on talking cars.
So this was a great question. I loved this so much. A car for new teen driver, manual transmission maybe.
Absolutely.
Fun, a little bit of safety thrown in. What a responsible young man. And we thought, why don't we just throw it out to you guys and we'll all kind of chime in on what we recommend for Luke. So Ryan, let's start with you.
Well, you said earlier that you already know mine.
I do. I know exactly.
And I'm
what
curious
you're
if you
gonna
actually
say,
do.
But
Yeah.
please
He
go ahead.
probably does.
Please go ahead.
We
And
probably
say
all chose the same thing.
New or used, but to get the safety stuff, a new Mazda 3.
Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah.
ding.
I mean, I've said it.
By the way, Alex, I won that little bet we
Yeah.
had on the side. Okay.
It wasn't an official
All right.
bet.
We'll pay out later.
I've said it a million times before. I think it's just a no-brainer. It's a fun little car. It's got the safety. It's got safety. Most of the safety stuff in it that you'd want, and it's a manual, and it's a fun little manual.
Yeah. Handles
and
well.
For
Good gas mileage.
and for a first car, or maybe not. Is it his first car?
I think he said.
Either way,
Is it first car? Listen, whether he's footing the bill or he's got really nice parents, Luke is setting himself up for a car. So
oh yeah, it's a great. I think that's a great choice. And that would be my recommendation. But.
right.
Yeah, and the key with the manual is in the safety stuff is that doesn't always go together,
Yeah,
right?
that's where it gets tricky.
Like
yeah.
I wanted to say in the spirit of the episode, a used Crosstrek or Impreza with a manual.
Look at you.
But
Yep.
that means you're giving up the eyesight system, right? So you don't get FCW and AEB in these things. So a counter to the Mazda 3 could be a Civic, but I'm going to send Luke on a kind of like a hunt for a car there is one out there. I did look. A 2016 or 2017, I'm going used, Honda Accord Coupe V6 with the 6-speed manual. You can get it with AEB or FCW, and they do exist. But
And if he finds that, he should also buy a lotto ticket.
That
his
is
luck
an
is up.
inspired pick.
I thought really long and hard about that one for you, Luke. So yeah, and you'll have fun maybe trying to find that car. They do exist. They're out there, but yeah, obviously it's going to be like 1 or 2 or something like that. But
right,
that would be
listen.
super fun.
I'm gonna stay with the Honda family because you sort of mentioned it.
Cool.
I'm going with a 2020 or later Honda Civic Sport hatchback.
That's
Nice.
fun too.
This is an awesome car. Used, I priced them around $24,000. New comes in about $26,000. So it's a lot of car for the money. Super fun to drive. Good fuel economy. Honda reliability. You don't really have to worry. Well, for all of our picks, Luke doesn't have to worry about anyone borrowing his car. He doesn't have to worry about any. Why? Because they can't drive a manual transmission. He doesn't have to worry about it getting stolen. So this is super awesome. I love the Civic Sport hatchback. I mean, I'm thinking if I was Luke's age, this is a car that I would totally dig, especially the hatchback design, fold down the seat, put all kinds of stuff in there. But even as a man that could be, Luke's dad, I would drive this car every day.
Right.
That's how much I like the Civic Sport hatchback. And I'm so glad that Honda is still offering a manual transmission with this car. And
one of the best shifter feels out there.
Yeah,
out of
agree.
all these suggestions, if you one of the Hondas, right? With they just make one of the best, feels in terms of actually shifting the gears. So
it is a tremendous car. And actually, all your guys' choices are fantastic. And Luke, we could just say, keep in touch with us. Let us know what you finally decide to go with, because we want some follow up here. And you are a dude out of our own hearts, and we're so happy that you're watching Talking Cars and you're interested in shifting for yourself. And that's gonna do it for this episode, which was produced by none other than super producer Dave Abrams, edited by Andrew Belize, and of course Anatoly the Great Shumsky. Check the show notes for more information on the vehicles and topics that we discussed. Just a reminder, keep your questions coming to talkingcars@icloud.com. Thanks so much for tuning in, you guys.
you're very welcome.
And we'll see you next week.